my husband Camille apologized to me in such a Philippines manner, saying he got his mistress pregnant and we needed to break up. I was dumbfounded, and my affection for him ran out 6 months ago. Is the mistress someone I know? I asked. Yeah, it's Kyra. Remember meeting her again at Alice's wedding reception. Since then, my husband seemed completely unashamed. Alice's wedding was the year before last, so you've been cheating for over a year. Alice was a college classmate, and Kyra was a junior 2 years behind me. She was in the same research group as Alice, and we played tennis together in college, so I remember her well. She was nicknamed Little Devil behind her back and was quite famous in a way. Huh. Oh, is that so? Time flies when we get older. My husband just laughed it off. What on earth was he thinking? I can't understand him at all. I'm Viola, 30 years old. I met my husband in the college tennis club despite him being 5 years older at 35. He often showed up as an alumnus who loved happy hours, had lots of friends, and was friendly with everyone. He took great care of freshmen and was kind, but I later realized it was limited to girls after we started dating. I cried many times due to his cheating habits back then, but I loved him and married him right after graduation. But once I started working, I got to know the real him, or rather, his useless side. He frequently appeared in the tennis club's clubhouse, acting all high and mighty with the juniors because he was completely ignored by his peers. The truth was he was so incompetent at his job that he wasn't given any serious responsibilities. Even now, there's no prospect of a raise or promotion. He's just a pretentious good-for-nothing who can't do his job or household chores. I tried various things to change him after we got married, but his refusal to change made me give up. The reason I had to divorce him wasn't just that work was busy and it was a hassle, but also because his parents were good people, a reason that had nothing to do with my husband himself. So look, we need to split up quickly because of the baby coming. You can have this apartment, and I'll leave. That's the end of it, okay? I was taken aback by his careless words and my husband's sly grin. What? No way. Let's part ways cleanly. This is not a good opportunity. As I neared my 40s, I started wanting a child. I had graduated college and started working as a full-time employee. I found myself in a situation where I was earning more than my husband, and my company offered excellent parental and maternity leave benefits. I was ready to start a family, but despite our efforts, it just wasn't happening, and it broke my heart. The love I once felt for my husband had dwindled away, especially after discovering his affair and the news that he got the other woman pregnant. I was determined to cleanly and completely end the relationship. What infuriated me even more was his lack of remorse. Instead of apologizing, he simply voiced his needs and demands. It was evident that it was time to put an end to this unpleasant relationship that had dragged on for years. We would involve a lawyer, ask for compensation, and divide our property. And of course, we would expect something from Kyra as well. However, when I voiced my concerns about the financial aspect, my husband callously suggested that I take on the debt myself since it was his affair that caused the separation. When I glared at him, he relented, admitting that he might need his father's help to cover the expenses. I proceeded with the divorce proceedings and hired a lawyer. Despite multiple calls from my in-laws pleading with me to reconsider, I remained steadfast in my decision. Even my father-in-law broke down in tears, acknowledging that if I left, it would spell the end for him. My mother-in-law begged me to reconsider, expressing her love for me like her own daughter. But even they understood once I laid bare the truth about my husband's constant infidelity and laziness. Finally, they apologized profusely, hanging their heads in shame. They even paid the compensation in a lump sum on behalf of my husband, who had no savings of his own. They made him promise never to ask for their help again and to repay them promptly. I still can't fathom how such a careless and irresponsible man could come from parents as decent and responsible as his. I decided to retreat to my parents' house. The divorce proceedings, which I had anticipated as a hassle, wrapped up faster than I expected. Returning to my recently relocated family home, 6 months flew by. I found myself consumed by work on weekdays and occupied with household chores on weekends, leaving little room to dwell on my ex-husband. Then, out of the blue, my best friend Alice called, seething with anger from the moment she started speaking. Viola, did you know your ex-husband Camille and Kyra? They're living it up in a new high-rise apartment, flaunting their wealth everywhere. Kyra even had the audacity to invite me to her baby shower party. The presents alone cost over $100, and there's a $100 participation fee. It's outrageous, isn't it? She exclaimed. I was taken aback by the news. I hadn't realized that Kyra had given birth, let alone why she would reach out to Alice. Both my ex-husband and Kyra were well aware that Alice was my best friend. Why would Kyra even extend an invitation to her, knowing Alice would undoubtedly relay everything to me? When I tentatively mentioned this to Alice, her anger escalated even further. She did it deliberately, Viola. Deliberately. That awful woman had the nerve to tell me she's so happy now, thanks to Viola breaking up with Camille. Can you believe her audacity? She's the worst kind of person. I want to put her in her place somehow. Alice raged. That nickname from our college days resurfaced in my mind. Kara was always known as the little devil, stirring up trouble among seemingly happy couples. Even when relationships were strained because of her involvement, she remained composed, wearing a facade of innocence. If a couple splits up just because someone else shows interest, it wasn't true love to begin with, right? They would have broken up eventually anyway, so what's the harm? She'd say, her words dripping with sugary sweetness, all the while smirking knowingly. I felt a pang of pity for Kyra, realizing she might never have experienced genuine love. Despite this, I knew better than to involve myself with her, so I made the conscious decision to keep my distance, at least for the time being. Kara didn't matter much to me. There was something else that demanded my attention. Alice. There's only one newly constructed high-rise apartment building, right? Have you heard anything about them moving in? I asked Alice, seeking any information she might have. I've never met them, Alice quickly replied, but apparently it was very recent. They've been boasting about securing a spot. Fortunately, someone who had bought one of the units had to relocate for work and put it back on the market without moving in. Ah, that makes sense, I nodded, processing the information. So, your moving day is Sunday, right? The baby shower party is on Saturday. You'll only need to be cautious for one day. There are multiple elevators, and they might use different entrances. You're right, we haven't crossed paths so far, so it should be fine. Alice concurred. We live together, but unexpected situations can still arise. As fate would have it, an unexpected situation did indeed unfold on Saturday. While waiting for the elevator on the first floor, I found myself face to face with my ex-husband and Kyra as they stepped out of the elevator. Hey, Viola, what are you doing here? My ex-husband spoke first, with Kyra chiming in. Viola, are you here to celebrate with us? You must be eager to see our adorable baby, aren't you? Kyra's voice was cheerful, her smile radiant, but her eyes betrayed a different story. They held no hint of amusement. What? Seriously, did you come to crash the party without an invitation? My ex-husband interjected, his tone incredulous. To scope out the high-rise apartment or catch a glimpse of our little prince. The casual reference to the baby as both baby and prince grated on my nerves. That's not it, I retorted coolly. I was just waiting for the elevator. I responded, consciously switching to a polite tone midway through the conversation. Camille was now my ex, essentially a stranger, and I didn't want to create a scene. So you're planning to visit my house after all? Camille remarked with a hint of amusement. You're so silly, Viola. Stop being stubborn. Perhaps you're just envious of our luxurious high-rise apartment and our adorable little prince. Do you still harbor feelings for me? Are you feeling lonely and longing to see me again? Camille, that's not acceptable, I interjected firmly. Regardless of any lingering emotions you think I may have, you're now married to Kyra. It's inappropriate for me to barge into your home uninvited. And as for jealousy, Kyra, you're mistaken, but I appreciate your concern. Camille continued, dismissing my words. Sorry, Viola, but Kyra and our son are our top priorities now. You're not welcome here. As I listened to their conversation, I couldn't help but feel perplexed. It had been 6 months since I last saw my ex-husband, and yet his mindset remained as irrational as ever. Kara's attitude was equally baffling. It dawned on me that my cheating ex-husband and his new partner were a perfect match in their own peculiar way. Reflecting on it, I regretted wasting my precious 20s on Camille. I'm utterly ashamed of my past with Camille, wishing to bury those memories deep in darkness. If only I had ended things sooner without making excuses, I wouldn't have to endure this nonsense from my ex-husband and his partner. My words seemed to strike a nerve with Camille, who retorted, What's that? You're really lacking charm. Learn from Kyra. Even her jealousy is endearing. She's just given birth, yet she still takes the effort to look stylish for me. Don't you find her admirable? Not at all embarrassed. I replied calmly. I was simply going to the grocery store. I was dressed in a plain white t-shirt and jeans, clean and presentable. That's the problem. I grew tired of your simplicity. Camille snapped. Enough already. We have nothing to do with each other. Just go home. Annoyed by his dismissive tone, I retorted, actually, this is my home. Seeing their disbelief, I had to explain. I've been living with my parents in this high-rise apartment for 6 months now. My father was approached by salespeople when talks of selling the land he owns arose. They suggested that living in a high-rise would be more convenient, especially as he's getting older. While it's not entirely our land, we received a substantial sum from selling it. During negotiations, we were able to move into one of the higher floors for much less than market value. Camille was taken aback. You're landowners with that much money. If I had known, I wouldn't have agreed to the divorce. Give me back the compensation money. There's no need for a property settlement, I replied firmly. The compensation was a result of your affair, and the property settlement was a matter between us as a married couple. As I spoke, I noticed Kyra mumbling to herself, her silence speaking volumes. I caught it. I can't believe Viola is living in a high-rise. I thought I had totally won, Kyra exclaimed, shooting me a glare. But Viola, you don't have a baby or a loving partner, do you? I haven't lost yet. Look, Kyra, I was never competing with you, I replied calmly. In fact, I'm thankful to you for giving me the opportunity to break up with Camille. Oh, and I'm moving out of my house tomorrow, so I don't think we'll see each other again. What? Why? You just moved into a high-rise, they both exclaimed in surprise. I shrugged, explaining, maybe it's a matter of different values. It just wasn't a good fit for my family. I found living in a high-rise unsuitable for hanging laundry outside. There are no balconies on the higher floors for safety, and only some windows can be opened. It wasn't suitable for my mother and me, who prefer drying laundry and bedding in natural sunlight and wind without using a dryer. Plus, the intense sunlight made it too hot even with the air conditioning on. The building also shakes quite a bit during even a magnitude 3 earthquake. It's designed to sway to prevent collapse, and the higher floors shake more. It was terrifying. Most stressful of all was the daily elevator ride. It gets crowded during the morning commute, and it takes time since it stops on each floor. The advertised 3-minute walk from the station felt much longer in the elevator. We were too bothered by the drawbacks unique to high-rise living, so we decided to move to a regular house with a garden. After all, luckily, our apartment sold quickly at almost the same price we bought it for. As I finished explaining, both my ex-husband and Kyra grinned. Oh, so we'll never see each other again. So, a high-rise wasn't suitable for commoners like you. It's more suited for an elite celebrity family like mine, Kyra remarked sarcastically. I couldn't comprehend how he arrived at that conclusion, but one thing became abundantly clear. What I grew to despise and ultimately gave up on was that facet of you, pretentiousness without substance, an unwillingness to change or exert any effort. I reached my breaking point with you, but it's all right now. You're beyond repair, so goodbye, I repeated, echoing my ex-husband's own words back to him. Stepping into the just-arrived elevator, I glanced at Kyra, who was glaring at both my astonished ex-husband and me. Right before the doors closed, I added one final remark. By the way, are you sure the child is truly yours? My ex-husband looked utterly perplexed, prompting me to clarify. I mean exactly what I said, right, Kyra? You understand what I'm implying, don't you? As the doors closed, I didn't know what transpired next in reality. However, during our struggle to conceive, I underwent tests at the gynecologist's, which revealed no issues on my end. I began to suspect the problem might lie with my husband, but he adamantly refused to get tested. Hence, I delivered that incendiary parting shot. Later, I heard from a mutual friend who attended Kyra's baby shower. Despite boasting about their high-rise lifestyle, my ex-husband and Kyra were residing on the 3rd floor. Additionally, despite their extravagant demands for gifts and participation fees, only cheap snacks from the grocery store were served. When a friend voiced a soft complaint, Kyra reportedly exploded, demanding gratitude for the chance to see her baby up close and insisting on payment. This sparked a heated argument between my ex-husband and Kyra, leaving their gathering in disarray. Thanks in part to my earlier cryptic remark, it was revealed that my ex-husband and Kyra had moved into a high-rise but were struggling financially, attempting to swindle money from their friends through fabricated reasons. Their deceit caused outrage among their friends, who promptly left. Meanwhile, my family and I settled into a single-family home with a garden, where I recently welcomed an adorable kitten. Our former high-rise was embroiled in controversy due to significant defects and illegal construction methods, making it unsellable. Reflecting on our situation, we realized we were unexpectedly fortunate. Now, I find solace in my severed ties with my ex-husband and cherish the tranquility of my peaceful days. As I hang the laundry on a sunny afternoon, my kitten sometimes curls up on the clothes, its adorable sleeping face bringing me a sense of contentment. Today, like many others, was a good day. My grandson David experienced his first winter this year. The weather report said it was a record cold day, and I couldn't help but worry about David and his mother, Yvonne. I hoped they hadn't gotten sick from the cold. That night, I sent Yvonne a message on my smartphone asking, "Are you and the baby okay? Not catching a cold?" But even though I sent it 2 or 3 times, there was no reply, not even a read receipt. She's always been so responsible, so I hoped she wasn't overdoing it. After waiting another hour, I tried calling, but there was no answer. Worried something serious had happened, I quickly put on my thick jumper and rushed out to drive to my son's family apartment. There was no response when I rang the intercom, and fearing the worst, that Yvonne had collapsed inside, I had the building manager open the door. The apartment was dark, with only light from the street lamps seeping in. Groping along the wall, I searched for the light switch. I fumbled for it several times, but the lights wouldn't turn on. What's going on here? I thought, feeling a mix of anxiety and irritation. With no other option, I used my smartphone's flashlight to look around. "Yvonne, are you there? Could they be out?" Just as I was about to leave, I thought I heard a baby's cry from the bedroom. "Yvonne, are you there?" I quickly headed to the bedroom. There, I found Yvonne shivering from the cold but desperately wrapping newborn David in a sheet to keep him warm. What happened? To my shock, Yvonne's once long and proud black hair was now chopped off, almost completely shaved. "This is terrible. What happened here?" "My name is Mary Smith. I'm 61 years old. I've worked as a hairstylist for many years, running a salon out of my home. Chatting casually with my regulars during their appointments has always been the highlight of my day. The salon was originally started by my husband and me. However, he passed away from cancer when he was young, not long after our son Harry was born. Despite the challenges, I raised Harry on my own, but Harry didn't make it easy. He often skipped school and got into trouble when he did attend. After graduating high school, he didn't continue his education, instead spent his days hanging out in town. I often wondered if he felt inferior because he didn't have a father around, or if I wasn't a good enough mother. I always worried about Harry's future but never found an answer. So when Harry suddenly said one day, "I want to be a hairstylist," I was so surprised I pinched my cheek, thinking I was dreaming. "What's gotten into you?" I asked. "Hairstylists are popular with the ladies, right?" Harry replied with a smirk. "I guess kids do grow up watching their parents, huh?" Regardless of the reason, I decided to take a positive view of my son showing interest in his future for the first time. Harry successfully graduated from cosmetology school and started working as an apprentice at a senior salon. That's where he met Yvonne, who would later become his wife. Harry was smitten with her at first sight, and after a strong pursuit, he announced to me with a confident smile, "I've decided to marry this girl," introducing me to Yvonne. "Nice to meet you. I'm Yvonne. You were a hairstylist too, right? I look forward to learning from you." Yvonne, with her long black hair and bright smile, was a wonderful woman. "I look forward to that," I replied, instantly liking her. A year after their marriage, Harry expressed his desire to start his own salon. Though he hadn't been an apprentice for long, he seemed to have gained a lot of confidence as a hairstylist. "I want to have my own place and prove my skills." Honestly, I was a bit worried. I knew from my experience that it's not easy for a newcomer to make it on their own in this industry, but I couldn't ignore the earnest look in Harry's eyes as he talked about his dream. "How much do you have saved up?" I asked. He showed me his bank book with a troubled look and a sigh. Despite having a steady income, he was spending just as much as he earned. With this pattern, he was far from having enough to start his own business. Harry had been squandering most of his earnings on leisure. Perhaps I should have advised him to give up then, but I smiled and said, "Don't worry about the money." Indulging him was maybe my way of making up for the loneliness he felt growing up without a father. Truth be told, I hadn't touched the life insurance money left by my late husband. "It's for Harry. You forgive me, right?" I whispered to my husband's portrait. One of my regulars was knowledgeable in real estate, so I consulted with her. That place would be perfect, she said. It was a property that had been used as a barber shop until half a year ago, but the owner had retired due to old age. The location wasn't bad, and she thought it might be just right for Harry's new start. During the renovation, one of my regulars said, "Use my husband. He just lazes around the house on his days off anyway." Another chimed in, "My son's studying architecture in college and is home for the summer break. He can help out too, get some hands-on experience." Thanks to their help, the construction went smoothly. Once we got the health department's approval, the salon opened in no time. I never imagined I could set up my own business so quickly. You should thank everyone. It's not something you could have done alone. I know. I'm grateful to you, Mom," Harry said. Then I handed Harry the bank book containing the remainder of his father's inheritance. The purchase and renovation costs were lower than expected, so there was still more than half left. "This is a gift from your father to you. Use it wisely for business expenses and don't you dare waste it." Yeah, I'm not a kid. I get it," Harry said, chuckling in annoyance. "Don't worry, I'll keep a close eye on Harry to make sure he doesn't spend the money foolishly," Yvonne said with a bright smile. Her words made me laugh. With Yvonne's help, I didn't need to worry about interfering any further. I optimistically decided to watch over their business from a distance. But soon, I realized my optimism was misplaced. Yvonne occasionally visited my salon to update me on their progress, and each time her expression grew more somber. 3 months after Harry's salon opened, she confided, "Harry's not putting his heart into the work." "What? Harry, why?" He was so enthusiastic at first. Sure, he thought his skills would bring in customers, but within a month, he stopped smiling and began treating customers coldly. As a result, our reputation has plummeted and customers have stopped coming. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Harry had wanted his own salon so badly. What had changed in such a short time? Harry thought that being a good hairstylist was all it took, but running a salon is more than that. Yvonne sighed. She was right. Business doesn't work on the quality of your work alone. Customer service plays a huge role in success. It seemed Harry was missing that fundamental understanding. "So, what's Harry doing now?" I asked. "He's frustrated about the lack of customers and spends his days drinking. If he doesn't get his act together, we'll lose even more clients. Right now, I'm handling the customers we do have, but if our reputation keeps dropping, the business will only get worse," Yvonne explained, looking like she was on the verge of tears. I felt the same way. "All right, I'll have a serious talk with him next time I see him." "Thank you so much," Yvonne said, bowing deeply before brushing back her long black hair. "Your hair is always so stunning," I commented, trying to lighten the mood. "I started growing it out in middle school," she said proudly. "Being that long, any particular reason?" "Are you familiar with hair donation?" Yvonne looked at me earnestly. "Hair donation? I think I heard about it at a hairstylist's meeting, but I don't know much about it." Yvonne's eyes sparkled as she explained, "It's about making wigs from real hair for children who've lost their hair due to congenital diseases, illness, or accidents. I've been growing my hair to donate to organizations involved in this. Isn't it wonderful to be able to help someone?" I read an article about an actress who was doing it and thought maybe I could do that too. "Wow, that's really admirable, especially for someone as young as you," I said, overwhelmed by Yvonne's passion. 6 months into her marriage with Harry, Yvonne got pregnant. She's always been so conscientious, always pushing herself too hard. "When I'm not looking, Yvonne, this is the most crucial time. You really shouldn't overdo it," I repeatedly warned her. She'd just lightly laugh and say, "Don't worry, I'm taking it easy," consulting with the baby in my belly. But in reality, Yvonne worked at the salon right up until the last month of her pregnancy, supporting the family while Harry's attitude worsened. Every time Yvonne updated me, I felt my own shortcomings as a mother. One day, I finished work early and decided to check on their salon. I ran into Harry just as he was about to leave. "Where are you going?" "Out for a drink. There won't be any more customers today anyway," he said nonchalantly, laughing off the situation. The lack of customers had become normal for Harry, and he wasn't even trying to improve things anymore. "You're about to become a father, you know." Harry just waved his hand dismissively and hopped on his motorcycle. "We're not done talking. Think about Yvonne for once." Yeah, I'll do that when I feel like it." He laughed and sped off. Inside the salon, Yvonne was cleaning the floor. Today we managed to get just one customer, she said, smiling brightly despite looking exhausted. Are you eating properly? You need to get enough nutrition. Don't worry about me. It's not just about you, it's for the baby, I said sternly, making sure she understood the gravity of the situation. Yvonne teared up a bit and thanked me. At times like this, a father should be there to support her. I wanted to shout at Harry, who was nowhere to be found. Yvonne told me the salon wasn't doing well and that Harry was spending money recklessly every night. Giving that bank book to Harry was a mistake. I regretted my decision. Despite being busy, Yvonne never neglected her hair care. Gently stroking her belly, she said, I want to teach my child the joy of helping others. That's when I realized I wanted to support her since my son wasn't of much help. I decided to assist Yvonne at their apartment. I'm always sorry to trouble you. Don't worry about it. Just focus on the baby, she replied. It was my fault for not raising my son right. Because of that, Yvonne was suffering. Perhaps it was my way of atoning for my sins. At least at the end of summer, Yvonne went into labor earlier than expected and was rushed to the hospital. Harry was nowhere to be found, unreachable. I kept sending him messages, but there were no replies, not even read receipts. What on earth is he doing at a time like this? Yvonne's parents had passed away, so I was the only one who could be there for her. Don't worry, Yvonne, I'm here, I kept encouraging her as she bravely faced childbirth. After a long and difficult labor, I was overwhelmed by the sound of the baby's cries. He's born? You did it, Yvonne, I said, moved to tears. But Harry, who should have been there, never showed up. My grandson David was experiencing his first winter. The weather report said it was a record cold day. No wonder it was so chilly that I had trouble getting out of bed. My first thoughts were of Yvonne and newborn David. I hoped they weren't affected by the cold. Worried, I sent a message to Yvonne that night. Are you and the baby okay? Haven't caught a cold. But even after sending 2 or 3 messages, there was no response, not even a read receipt. I was concerned that Yvonne might be too ill to move. She's always been so responsible. I hope she's not overdoing it. After waiting another hour, I tried calling again, but the result was the same. Something's not right. Without a second thought, I put on my thick jumper and rushed out to their apartment. When I arrived, the place was engulfed in darkness. It's not uncommon for families to travel abroad during the holidays, but I hadn't heard anything about a trip from Yvonne and Harry, and they likely couldn't afford it anyway. I rang the intercom, but there was no response, fearing Yvonne might have collapsed. I immediately asked the building manager to open the door. I'll wait outside. Please let me know if there's anything, I told the manager before stepping inside. The apartment was dark, the only light coming from the street lamps outside. I remembered the light switch was right by the entrance. Relying on my memory, I groped for the light switch on the wall. But no matter how many times I flipped it on and off, the lights didn't respond at all. What's going on here? I thought, feeling a mixture of anxiety and irritation. With no other option, I used my smartphone's flashlight to illuminate the room as I stepped inside. Yvonne, are you here? I called out in the living room, but there was no answer. Maybe they had just gone out. Just as I was about to leave, I thought I heard a faint cry of a baby from the bedroom. Yvonne, are you in there? I quickly headed toward the sound. There was Yvonne, shivering from the cold, desperately wrapping newborn David in a sheet to keep him warm. What happened here? When I shone the light on her, I was shocked to see that her once long, proud black hair had been roughly cut off, almost to the scalp. Her eyes, red and swollen from crying, looked at me helplessly. This is terrible. How did this happen? I took off my jumper and draped it over Yvonne. It's okay now. Just tell me what happened as much as you can. Yvonne began to speak slowly. She said that Harry had continued his daily escapades even after David was born. Eventually, they couldn't pay the electric bill anymore, and Yvonne, unable to bear it any longer, Yvonne scolded Harry. She had just wanted him to be more responsible as a father, but her pleas fell on deaf ears. In a fit of rage, Harry grabbed a pair of practice hair-cutting scissors and started cutting off Yvonne's hair. At first, Yvonne tried to resist, saying, "Stop it," but fearing any further resistance might accidentally harm David, she stopped resisting. Harry laughed mockingly, saying, "Now you won't be able to show your face in public." I was speechless at my son's cruel actions. "Why didn't you tell me it had gotten this bad?" I asked. I'm sorry, Mom. I'm so sorry. Yvonne apologized, blaming herself again. No, Yvonne, it's not your fault. You're not the one to blame here. It's Harry. You did nothing wrong. I knew Yvonne hadn't confided in me because she didn't want to worry me. I hugged her tightly, tears streaming down my face. The whole situation was a result of my overindulgence in raising Harry. My heart burned with shame and anger at my own failings and my son's inability to empathize with others. Taking a deep breath, I called Harry. Hey, Mom, long time no talk. What's up? He answered, calling all of a sudden. Just wanted to hear your voice. How's everything over there? Are Yvonne and David doing okay? Of course, everyone's fine and doing well. I've been calling home, but no one's picking up. Where are you now? There was a brief pause in his voice, as if he was concocting an excuse. Actually, we're a family of 3 in Hawaii. We'll be back next week. Hawaii, huh? That sounds nice, I responded, though I knew he was blatantly lying to me. What had I been doing all these years, taking care of Harry after losing my husband at a young age? I worked non-stop as a hairstylist. It was all to raise Harry into a respectable person. When he expressed a desire to become an independent hairstylist, I fulfilled his wish without hesitation. Yet Harry carelessly squandered the inheritance his father left, using it for his own pleasures and even mistreating his wife and child. My expectations for Harry turned into profound disappointment. What would you like as a souvenir? I'll bring you something nice, Harry asked. Anything's fine. You're coming back next week, right? Safe and sound, I replied. Hey, Mom, you sound a bit off. Is something wrong? Harry seemed to sense something, but I ended the call without responding. I informed the building manager waiting outside of my plans and decided to take Yvonne and David back to my house. Then I started making calls to every place I could think of. A week later, Harry called me cheerfully, announcing that he had just landed at the airport. I'm back, Mom, and I've got souvenirs for you, he said, pretending to be the caring son. But my heart was no longer deceived by his act. That's nice to hear, I replied in a flat tone, though Harry didn't seem to notice anything unusual. About an hour later, a taxi pulled up in front of the apartment. Harry, clearly having enjoyed his solo trip to Hawaii with distinct tan lines from sunglasses around his eyes, unloaded a bunch of luggage from the trunk. He took out his keys, expecting to enter the apartment. Where his wife and son should be waiting, he must have thought that once he inserted and turned the key, the door would open immediately. However, no matter how many times he tried, the key wouldn't fit the lock. What's going on here? He exclaimed in frustration. I approached him quietly from behind and asked with a smile, Did you enjoy your trip to Hawaii? Though my heart was boiling with anger. Mom, you're here, Harry said, relieved to see me, misunderstanding the situation. Listen, Mom, I just got back and tried to enter the house, but the key won't fit. It must be Yvonne's prank. Punishing me for going on a trip alone, he tried to paint himself as the victim, blaming Yvonne, leaving Yvonne, who just gave birth, and newborn David behind. What were you doing? I told you I was in Hawaii with my family, Harry protested, suddenly panicking. Didn't you just say you went on the trip alone? I pointed out the contradiction. Harry was at a loss for words. You really had the nerve to lie about taking a family trip to Hawaii. Yvonne was here with the electricity cut off, shivering in the cold, holding David close to protect him, and to think she cherished her long hair, and you just cut it off mercilessly. Don't you feel any remorse as a human being? I guess I messed up there, but right now I just want to get inside the house. It's freezing in Japan, Harry replied, rubbing his arms theatrically, showing no sign of remorse. The cold Yvonne and David endured is nothing compared to this. Plus, you no longer have a home here. I've already canceled the lease on the apartment. It's time you find your own place to live, I stated firmly. Cancel the lease. What? Why would you do something like that without asking me? Harry protested, suddenly panicking. But the apartment was leased under my name after all. I couldn't just stand outside and continue this conversation, so I took Harry to a nearby coffee shop to talk further. Harry sipped his coffee silently, probably not even tasting it. He kept glancing between me and his coffee with a pale face. You were so strapped for cash that you couldn't pay the electric bill. Did you manage to go to Hawaii? I said, watching Harry grimace. Finally, he began to spill his selfish reasoning. He admitted that right from the start of his business, he was showing off to friends and women he picked up at the salon, spending his father's inheritance on his antics. He knew such spending would quickly deplete any fortune, but after getting a taste of the power of money, he continued his lavish lifestyle even after the inheritance ran out, racking up debts to buy gifts and take trips. "You're quite the big spender, aren't you, especially for a failing business?" I remarked. "Don't worry, I'm a professional hairstylist. Once I get serious clients, they will come flooding in and I'll be able to support my family," Harry replied with unfounded confidence. I looked at him coldly. "Your salon? I've already sold it, all the equipment too. It's too late to get anything back." I shattered his baseless confidence. "That's a lie. Why would you do something like that?" Harry's face turned red as he slammed his hand on the table. "Oh, you were planning to continue with the salon? I thought you had abandoned it since you left everything to Yvonne. Besides, I bought the building and land in my name. You have no right to complain now," I retorted. "But I was just trying to attract customers. I had it all planned out." Harry's eyes looked like those of a child about to burst into tears. "If you're so confident in your skills, you should be able to start over from scratch," I said coldly, then left the coffee shop after placing money for the coffee on the table. A month passed, Yvonne and I avoided any contact with Harry. But unpleasant rumors inevitably reached my ears after I pushed him away. Harry apparently ran to his friends begging for money, but they were the kind who gathered around him for his money. Naturally, nobody was willing to help a financially drained Harry. He even got reported to the police for stalking some of the women he picked up at his salon. Although he only received a stern warning from the police, the lack of support from his acquaintances hit him hard, and he completely disappeared from our lives. He's probably living alone now in fear of harsh debt collectors. All this is the consequence of his own actions. My anger towards Harry isn't just about his reckless spending. What's unforgivable is how he neglected Yvonne and David, pushing them into hardship, and above all, cutting off Yvonne's long hair, which she had grown out for years for a noble cause, thereby potentially robbing unknown children of a brighter future. As a fellow hairstylist, I could never forgive Harry's actions. It will take a long time for Harry to truly understand the emotional pain Yvonne has endured. Yvonne herself never speaks of her hurt, but it's clear she's not unscathed. She appears to be keeping her feelings bottled up, probably not wanting to worry me. Wanting to do something to help, I reached out to my hairstylist friends and had a special wig made for Yvonne. "It won't make up for my son's wrongs, but please use this," I said. "Thank you, Mom," Yvonne said with a smile, though tears were streaming down her cheeks. Using my aching back as an excuse, I asked Yvonne to help out at the salon. She threw herself into the work, seemingly trying to forget her emotional scars. "Hello, David," a regular greeted, and David in his cradle burst into giggles. Now some customers even come to the salon just to see him. He's like a little mascot, a baby that brings in good fortune. Yvonne, regaining her strength both physically and emotionally, has started the process of divorcing Harry. Seeing Yvonne's smile makes us all feel like we've shed 20 years, but it's true. Yvonne and David have brightened up the salon considerably. Attracted by Yvonne's cheerful atmosphere, more and more mothers with young children have become regulars. "Let's have a great day today." "Hi, how are you?" Now the salon is filled with smiles again. In a quiet corner, David is peacefully sleeping, his cute little snores filling the air.
Hey, I'm Anna. My life changed a lot 5 years into my marriage with Paul. We were a regular couple. I was a teacher. He worked as a manager at an energy company, and everything was pretty simple. Then Paul's dad passed away, leaving his mom Elaine alone in their family house. That's when Paul hit me with a bombshell. "Anna, we need to talk," he said seriously one night. I paused, looking up from my phone. "What's up? Is everything okay?" He took a deep breath and said, "It's about Mom. She's alone in that old house since Dad passed. I think we should move in with her." My stomach dropped. "Move in with Elaine? You know we barely get along," I protested. Paul leaned against the kitchen counter, firm in his expression. "I know, but she's my mom, and she's struggling. Plus, we're just burning money on this rented apartment." I sighed, running a hand through my hair. "But this is our space, our home. Moving in with your mom is a whole different ballgame." Paul pleaded, "Please, Anna. It's not just about the space. It's about family. Mom needs us." I felt cornered. "Does your mom need us? Or do you need your mom?" I asked. Paul frowned. That's not fair, Anna. It's not like I'm asking you to live in a dump. It's a huge house, plenty of room for all of us. Tension rose as I questioned our life there. But eventually, I caved for the sake of peace. Moving day was uncomfortable. Elaine's house was this imposing old structure with echoing rooms and a constant chill. Elaine greeted us with a stiff smile, saying, "Welcome to my home. I expect you to respect my ways." I forced a smile, saying, "Of course, Elaine. We appreciate you letting us stay." Living with Elaine felt like living with a hawk. She had a comment for everything: how to put dishes away, how much to water the plants. One night, after a particularly harsh critique on my cooking, I exploded to Paul in our room. "I can't do a damn thing right for your mother. It's like living with a drill sergeant." Paul rubbed his temples, equally frustrated. "Anna, just give it time. She's old and set in her ways." I threw my hands up in frustration. "Great, so we just tiptoe around her till the end of time." He didn't have an answer, and honestly, neither did I. This house, with its constant surveillance and Elaine's scrutinizing eyes, was suffocating. Life in Elaine's house was turning into a daily grind. Just when I thought I could handle it, Paul dropped another bombshell. It was a lazy Sunday afternoon, and I was trying to find some peace in the garden when he came out. "Anna, we need to talk," Paul said, leaning on the garden gate. I looked up, feeling a knot in my stomach. "What now, Paul?" He took a deep breath. "I think you should quit your job and stay home. We're spending a fortune on a nurse and housekeeper for Mom. It makes more sense." I stood up, anger rising. "Quit my job, Paul. I love teaching. It's not just about the money." He ran his hand through his hair, his tone getting edgy. "I know, but think about it. It'll make things easier around here." I shook my head, disbelief washing over me. "So what? I just become a full-time maid and nurse? That's not the life I want." Paul's voice rose. "It's not about what we want, Anna. It's about what's practical. My mom needs us." I glared at him. "No, your mom needs you. I didn't sign up to be her caretaker." He shot back. "Well, things change, Anna. We need to adapt." The word adapt felt like a slap. I loved my job, my independence. This wasn't adapting. This was sacrificing. "You know what, Paul? Fine, I'll do it, but don't expect me to be happy about it." He sighed, a look of relief crossing his face. "Thank you, Anna. It means a lot." But it didn't feel like a victory. Quitting my job felt like losing a part of myself. The days that followed were even harder. I had become a full-time housekeeper, nurse, and cook. Elaine, as always, had her 2 cents to add about everything. "Those curtains need a wash," she'd say, or "the soup is too salty." It was endless. One day, I snapped. Elaine was criticizing the way I ironed her clothes, and I couldn't take it anymore. "Elaine, can you just stop? I'm doing my best here," I said, feeling frustrated. She looked taken aback. "Well, I'm sorry if I have standards, Anna." I threw the iron down, my voice shaking. "I'm not your servant, Elaine. I'm your son's wife. I'm here trying to help, and all you do is criticize me." There was a moment of tense silence, and then Elaine's expression softened slightly. "I know you're trying, Anna. I'm just used to things a certain way." I sighed, feeling the tension drain out of me. "I know, Elaine, but I'm not you. I have my way of doing things." From that day on, things were slightly better. Elaine toned down her criticisms, and I tried to accommodate her quirks. It was a fragile truce, but it was better than the constant battles. As time dragged on in Elaine's house, the atmosphere grew tenser, almost suffocating. Paul's behavior became increasingly distant and elusive. He was consistently late from work, and when he was home, it was as if he was invisible, retreating to the spare room like it was his sanctuary. One evening, unable to bear the silence and distance any longer, I cornered him in the kitchen. "Paul, what's going on with you? You're hardly here, and when you are, it's like you're not even my husband anymore," I said, leaning against the counter with my arms folded. He avoided eye contact, absent-mindedly stirring his coffee. "Work's a nightmare right now, Anna. Just piles of stress," he replied. I leaned back, still concerned. I get stressed, Paul, but this feels like you're shutting me out. You're here, but you're not really here. He exhaled heavily, his gaze fixed on his coffee. I don't know what you want me to say, Anna. I'm just really tied up with stuff. I wanted to believe him, to understand, but something inside me screamed that there was more to it than he let on. Then there was Lucy, Paul's sister, who made it her mission to add to the tension. Each visit from her was a trial. She'd look around the house with a sneer and quip, "Still stuck in this old dump, huh?" I usually bit my tongue, but one day her taunts hit a nerve. Not all of us have the luxury to mooch off others. "Lucy," I shot back. She cackled, her voice grating on my nerves. "Oh, look at you playing the martyr in a haunted house. Pathetic." I clenched my jaw, holding back a barrage of words. Paul, ever the silent bystander, offered no defense. His silence was like another jab, another confirmation of the growing gulf between us. The biggest shift, however, came with Elaine one day. She called for Lucy, her voice frail and desperate. "Lucy, I need help with a bath. I can't manage on my own anymore." Lucy's response was cold and cutting. "Help yourself, Mom. I'm not your caretaker." Elaine broke down in tears, and despite our rocky history, I couldn't leave her in that state. I assisted Elaine with the bath, and something changed between us that day. Elaine started to warm up to me, treating me less like an intruder and more like a daughter. It was a welcome change, but it also emphasized how far Paul and I had drifted apart. Despite Elaine's newfound warmth, the house felt colder and emptier. The walls seemed to echo with a growing silence between Paul and me, a chasm widening with each passing day. The chill in our home grew colder as Paul's late nights at work became the norm, and our conversations turned into mere whispers of their former selves. During one of these fleeting interactions, Paul dropped a bombshell that added to the growing pile of secrets and lies. "Anna, I got an apartment near work," he said nonchalantly, as if discussing the weather. I almost dropped the dish I was cleaning. "An apartment? Why on earth would you need that?" He leaned against the doorframe, avoiding my gaze. "It's just practical, Anna. Saves me the commute, especially with the late nights." Anger and confusion surged within me. "And you just decided this without talking to me? What, are we roommates now?" He shrugged, his indifference cutting deep. "I thought you'd be happy, less stress about me coming home late." I shook my head in disbelief. "Happy, Paul? This feels like you're living a double life. What's next? You'll tell me you have a second family?" He sighed, rubbing his forehead. "Don't be dramatic, Anna. It's not like that." I wanted to push further, to break through his nonchalant facade, but I knew it was futile. The conversation ended there, as did many of our conversations those days. The true shock came a few days later in a candid conversation with Elaine. We were in the living room, sharing a rare moment of calm when she suddenly said, "You know, Paul didn't buy that apartment with his money." I looked at her puzzled. "What do you mean?" She hesitated, then continued, "He used my savings. He said it was an investment, even put it in my name." My heart sank. "He's been using your money, and you're okay with this?" Elaine shrugged, a sad look in her eyes. I couldn't say no. He's my son. But I thought you should know. I was speechless. Paul's secret apartment was one thing, but using his mother's savings under the guise of an investment felt like the man I married was slipping away, replaced by this stranger with secrets and lies. A few days later, I confronted Paul about it. "Why didn't you tell me the apartment was bought with your mom's money?" He was unapologetic, almost defiant. "Because I knew you'd react like this. It's an investment, Anna, not a big deal." I couldn't believe his audacity. "Not a big deal. You're gambling with your mom's savings and keeping it from me. What else are you hiding?" He turned away, ending the conversation with a dismissive wave. "You wouldn't understand, Anna. It's business." The word business felt like a chasm between us, an excuse for everything going wrong in our marriage. Living in Elaine's old, dreary house was taking its toll on me. The once vibrant walls now echoed a somber tone, and every creaking floorboard seemed to whisper secrets. One day, I couldn't take it anymore. Elaine, have you ever thought about renovating the house? I asked over breakfast. It could use some freshening up. Elaine looked up from her tea, surprised. Renovate? I haven't thought about it in years. It's such a big task. I nodded, feeling a spark of enthusiasm. I know, but it could really brighten up the place. Maybe just start with a new coat of paint or some new wallpaper. Elaine considered it for a moment. Well, I suppose it wouldn't hurt to bring some new life into this old house. But are you sure you're up for it? I smiled, eager for a project. Absolutely. It'll be a good change. And so it began. I threw myself into the renovation, painting walls, choosing wallpapers, and even attempting to restore some of the old furniture. It was hard work, but it felt good, like I was breathing life back into the house and, in a way, into myself. One day, while I was up to my elbows in paint, Paul walked in. He looked around, his expression one of shock and disbelief. What the hell, Anna? What are you doing to my mom's house? I stood up, wiping the sweat from my brow. I'm renovating, Paul, like I told Elaine. It's time this place got a little love and care. Paul's face hardened. You had no right to start changing things without asking me. This is my family home, not some DIY project. My temper rose. Your home? When was the last time you even cared about this place, Paul? I'm doing something good here. He took a step closer, his voice rising. You're overstepping, Anna. You always do this. Take control and push everyone else aside. I stared at him incredulously. Take control, Paul. I'm trying to make this gloomy place livable. Maybe if you spent more time here, you'd see that. Before Paul could retort, Elaine walked in. What's all this noise about? Paul turned to her. Mom, did you know about this? About her changing the house? Elaine looked from me to Paul, then back again. Yes, I did, and I'm glad she's doing it. This house needed a change, and Anna's doing a wonderful job. Paul looked like he'd been slapped. But it's our family home. Elaine cut him off, her tone firm. It's my home, Paul, and I want this. Anna has every right to do what she's doing. Paul stormed out of the room, leaving me and Elaine in an awkward silence. I felt a mix of victory and sadness. The house was transforming, but the gap between Paul and me seemed to only grow wider. The day Elaine suffered her stroke, our world turned upside down. I was there, witnessing her sudden decline, her words slurring, her body weakening. Panic gripped me as I called for help, my voice quivering with fear. In the hospital, the grim reality set in. Elaine needed constant care. I looked to Paul for support, but he was distant, his eyes void of the usual concern. Anna, I can't deal with this. I have enough on my plate, he said, his voice cold. I was stunned. You can't deal with this, Paul. She's your mother. He shrugged, his response cutting like a knife. Yeah, and she's been a burden for years. This is just the cherry on top. I couldn't hide my disgust. She's not a burden, Paul. She's family. She needs us. His laugh was bitter. Us? No, Anna. She needs you. I've got other things to handle. I was left speechless, my respect for him sinking. I took it upon myself to care for Elaine. It was hard watching the once strong woman confined to a bed, dependent for every little thing. As I became Elaine's primary caregiver, Paul's visits grew rarer, and his indifference more apparent. His visits were short, his conversations with Elaine brief and superficial. Then Lucy came. I overheard them in the living room, their words like venom. We should start thinking about the will, dividing the assets, Lucy said, her voice devoid of any emotion. I burst into the room, fury coursing through my veins. How can you be so heartless, discussing her will right in front of her? She's still here. Lucy smirked, her words sharp. Oh, look who's talking, the saintly daughter-in-law. This is our family's matter. Stay out of it. Paul chimed in, his voice laced with cynicism. Anna, just drop it. It's practical to plan these things. No use pretending she's going to bounce back. I was aghast at his cruelty. Practical. She's your mother, Paul. How can you be so callous? He shrugged, his reply cold and detached. Life's callous, Anna. Better get used to it. I turned away, my heart heavy with disgust. In the following weeks, I dedicated myself to Elaine's recovery. And to my surprise, she showed signs of improvement. Her fingers twitched, her speech cleared. She even managed a few steps. It was a miracle to me, but a nuisance to Paul and Lucy. Their true colors were now vividly clear. Their mother's plight was nothing more than an inconvenience, a hurdle in their path of inheritance. The betrayal stung deep, not just as a daughter-in-law, but as a human being. Life had settled into a grim routine. Elaine's health was a constant roller coaster, with small victories overshadowed by the looming fear of the worst. Then it happened. Another stroke, this time more severe. The call from the hospital felt like a punch to the gut. Elaine didn't make it. The funeral was a somber affair. I stood beside the grave, my heart heavy, watching as people paid their respects. That's when Paul arrived, and with him, a woman I didn't recognize and two small kids clinging to her hands. "Who's she?" I whispered to myself, my eyes fixed on the unfamiliar woman. Paul approached, his expression unreadable. "Anna, this is Carol, my wife, and these are our kids." I felt like I had been slapped. "Your wife? When did this happen?" He shrugged, a coldness in his voice. "A while ago." "It's none of your business, Anna." I was speechless, my mind reeling. How could he? And during all this time with Elaine, Lucy was there too, her usual sneer in place. "Finally showing your true colors, Anna? Playing the grieving daughter-in-law. It's a bit late for that." I glared at her, my voice laced with contempt. "I was here for Elaine when you both abandoned her." "Don't you dare judge me," Paul interjected. "Let's just get this over with. We have other matters to discuss." After the funeral ended and the gathering moved to Elaine's house for the will reading, Paul and Lucy were like vultures, eagerly awaiting their share. The lawyer began reading the will, and that's when the bombshell dropped. Everything, the house, the money, all of it was left to me. Paul's face went from smug to shocked. "What the hell? This can't be right." Lucy was fuming. She was our mother. How could she leave everything to this nobody? I stood there stunned, not sure how to feel. Happy. Vindicated. It all felt hollow. Paul turned to me, his voice filled with accusation. "You manipulated her, didn't you? Turned her against us." I shook my head, disbelief and anger mixing in my voice. "I did nothing but care for her, which is more than I can say for you." The lawyer intervened. Elaine was very clear in her will. Lucy was seething. "This is not the end. We'll contest this. There's no way we're letting her get away with this." As they left in a huff, I stood there alone in the house that was now legally mine, the walls that had witnessed so much pain, betrayal, and love. I looked around, feeling the weight of Elaine's last act of kindness and the burden of a broken family. The house felt different now, like it was echoing with Elaine's last wishes. I was sitting there, holding the will, still trying to get my head around everything. Elaine had left it all to me, and Paul and Lucy were raging mad about it. They came back the next day, all fired up. "You really think you can just take everything?" Paul burst out as soon as he stepped in. I looked up, tired but standing my ground. "Elaine decided this, Paul. It was her choice." Lucy was red in the face, yelling, "You tricked the sick old lady. We won't let you get away with this." I stood up, fed up with their nonsense. "Tricked. I was there for her, unlike you two. She chose to leave it to me." Paul was fuming. "So you think you've beaten us? You think you can just snatch everything away?" I let out a heavy sigh. "I didn't snatch anything, Paul. Elaine gave it to me because she knew I actually cared." Their yelling didn't stop, but it was just noise against the truth I knew. I was there for Elaine when they weren't. The lawyer showed up with a video Elaine had made. Her voice filled the room, and she said it clear as day. "I left everything to Anna because she was like the daughter I never had. She was there when my own kids weren't. She deserves it all." The room went quiet. Paul looked like he had been punched in the gut, and Lucy started crying, finally realizing what they had done. After that, Paul and Lucy left, and all their threats just fell flat. I was alone in the big house, surrounded by the past and thinking about the future. I decided to divorce Paul. It was tough, but it had to be done. He and his new family had to move to a rental place. Lucy had her own mess to deal with. Her debts and bad choices were catching up to her. As for me, I was standing in my new house, feeling sad but also kind of excited. Elaine's will wasn't just about the house and money. It was like she was telling me to be strong and make my own way. I decided to start over, use what Elaine left me to build something new for myself. The house, once a reminder of tough times, was now a place for new beginnings.